my other question is on India-Pakistan ceasefire or understanding. The conversation between which all countries led to this ceasefire? What was India's view on that, on mediation? And what did India convey to these countries?
Okay. Jessica?
Hi sir, this is Jessica Taneja for DD India. Now that both sides have agreed for stoppage of firing and military action, what will happen to the Indus Water Treaty? Because Pakistan has said that stopping of water will be considered as an act of war. What are your views on this?
Kadambini?
कादम्बरी शर्मा, इंडिपेंडेंट जर्नलिस्ट। सर, डोनाल्ड ट्रंप ने एक बयान दिया है कि उन्होंने सीज़ फायर जो हुआ है वो उन्होंने ट्रेड का हवाला देकर कराया है। तो क्या प्रधानमंत्री मोदी और डोनाल्ड ट्रंप के बीच ट्रेड को लेकर कोई बात हुई है इस संदर्भ में?
सिद्धांत?
Hi sir, I am Siddhant from CNN News 18. Sir, any reaction to statement which came from Pakistan's Foreign Ministry on Prime Minister Modi's speech at from Frontline Adampur Air Base?
Okay, let me take these questions and then we'll come back for more. So Siddhant, regarding your question, as you are aware, we have a long-standing national position that any issues pertaining to the Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir have to be addressed by India and Pakistan bilaterally. That stated policy has not changed. As you are aware, the outstanding matter is the vacation of illegally occupied Indian territory by Pakistan. और people like Manish, आपके लिए मैं हिंदी में रूपांतर कर दे रहा हूँ। हमारा लंबे अरसे से यही राष्ट्रीय पक्ष रहा है कि भारतीय केंद्र शासित प्रदेश जम्मू और कश्मीर से संबंधित किसी भी मुद्दे को भारत और पाकिस्तान को द्विपक्षीय तरीके से ही हल करना है। इस नीति में कोई बदलाव नहीं हुआ है। जैसा कि आप जानते हैं, लंबित मामला केवल पाकिस्तान द्वारा अवैध रूप से कब्जा किए गए भारतीय क्षेत्र को खाली करने का है। Siddhant, you had another question regarding ceasefire and what sort of role other countries played, etc. See, the specific date, time and wording of the understanding was worked out between the DGMOs of the two countries at their phone call on 10th May 2025, commencing at 15:35 hours. The Foreign Secretary had made a statement in this regard, as you would be aware. The request for this call was received by MEA from the Pakistani High Commission at 12:37 hours. The Pakistani side had initial difficulties connecting the hotline connecting to the Indian side due to technical difficulties. The timing was then decided based on the availability of the Indian DGMO at 15:35 hours. You will of course appreciate that early on 10th morning, we had mounted an extremely effective attack on key Pakistani Air Force bases. That was the reason they were now willing to stop firing and military action. Let me be clear, it was the force of Indian arms that compelled Pakistan to stop its firing. As regards conversations with other nations, the message from India was clear and consistent, and exactly the same message that we were conveying from public platforms was the one conveyed in private conversations. It was that India was responding to the 22nd April terrorist attack by targeting the terrorist infrastructure. However, if the Pakistani armed forces fire, Indian armed forces will fire back. If Pakistan stops, India will also stop. This was also the message that was conveyed to the Pakistani side at the time of the commencement of Operation Sindoor, which was not heeded to by the Pakistani side at that time. It is natural that many foreign leaders who heard this from us would have shared it with their Pakistani interlocutors. Jessica, you had a question on IWT. The other day you saw that after the CCS decision, this Indus Water Treaty has been put in abeyance. I would also like to take you back a little. The IWT, the Indus Water Treaty, was concluded in the spirit of goodwill and friendship as specified in the preamble of the treaty. However, Pakistan has held these principles in abeyance by its promotion of cross-border terrorism for several decades now. Now, as per CCS decision that I referred to of 23rd April, India will keep the treaty in abeyance until Pakistan credibly and irrevocably abjures its support for cross-border terrorism. Please also note that climate change, demographic shifts, and technological changes have created new realities on ground as well. Kandarmi had a question regarding trade matters. From the time of Operation Sindoor commenced on 7th May, till the understanding on cessation of firing and military action on 10th May, there were conversations between Indian and US leaders on the evolving military situation. The issue of trade did not come up in any of these discussions. Siddhant, you had a question on the latest statement issued by the Pakistan Foreign Office. We have seen the statement made by the Pakistani side that a nation which has nurtured terrorism on an industrial scale should think that it can escape the consequences is fooling itself. The terrorist infrastructure sites that India destroyed were responsible not only for the deaths of Indians, but of many other innocents around the world. There is now a new normal. The sooner Pakistan gets it, the better it is. Shall we take more questions? Aditya? में कोई बदलाव नहीं हुआ है। जैसा कि आप जानते हैं, लंबित मामला केवल पाकिस्तान द्वारा अवैध रूप से कब्जा किए गए भारतीय क्षेत्र को खाली करने का है। Siddhant, you had another question regarding ceasefire and what sort of role other countries played, etc. See, the specific date, time and wording of the understanding was worked out between the DGMOs of the two countries at their phone call on 10th May 2025, commencing at 15:35 hours.
Good evening, sir. Megha from News.
The Foreign Secretary had made a statement in this regard, as you would be aware. The request for this call was received by MEA from the Pakistani High Commission at 12:37 hours.
Is going to be held later in the week.
The Pakistani side had initial difficulties connecting the hotline
globally designated
due to
terrorist organization. If you could shed more light into this.
Connecting to the Indian side due to technical difficulties. Rishabh, the timing was then decided based on the availability of the Indian DGMO at 15:35 hours. You will of course appreciate that early on 10th morning, we had mounted an extremely effective attack on key Pakistani Air Force bases. That was the reason they were now willing to stop firing and military action. Let me be clear, it was the force of Indian arms that compelled Pakistan to stop its firing. As regards conversations with other nations, the message from India was clear and consistent, and exactly the same message that we were conveying from public platforms
again he claimed yesterday
was the one conveyed in private conversations. It was that India was responding to the 22nd April terrorist attack by targeting the terrorist infrastructure
by reaching out to both
However,
capitals.
if the Pakistani
He
armed
said that in
forces
fact he pressured India and
fire,
Pakistan
Indian armed
to
forces
just come
will fire
forward
back.
for the cessation of hostilities.
If Pakistan stops,
saying that if you
India
don't
will
do,
also
then
stop.
I will stop trade with both
This
the
was also the
countries.
message
So
that
can you
was
please
conveyed to the
clarify,
Pakistani side
whether he
at
just
the
reached
time
out to
of the
us,
commencement of
and
Operation
asked
Sindoor,
us to stop,
which was
have been
not
maintaining
heeded
that
to
in fact the resolution
by the
was
Pakistani
arrived
side
at by
at that
two
time.
DCMOs, but have you just protested at US side for making these claims, which we
It is
consider
natural
are
that
baseless?
many foreign leaders who heard this from us
let me take these
would have
questions.
shared it with their
First, Aditya,
Pakistani
your question.
interlocutors.
You know, we have had several rounds of briefings.
Jessica, you had
and
a
in these
question on
briefings we have also
IWT.
shared with you the kind of
The other
linkage
day
we
you
see
saw that
between the perpetrators of the
after
attack
the
of
CCS
Pahalgam,
decision, this
in
Indus
particular
Water Treaty
the
has been put in
resistance
abeyance.
front.
I would also
Foreign
like to
Secretary
take
in
you
his
back a
statement also
little. The
made very
IWT,
clear,
the Indus
the
Water
kind of,
Treaty, was concluded in the
kind of
spirit
evidence
of
that we
goodwill
see,
and friendship,
and
as
investigation is
specified
going on in
the
this
preamble of the
particular
treaty.
matter. You would have
However, Pakistan
seen
has
that
held
PRF
these
had
principles
taken
in abeyance
responsibility, and then second time again
by its
second day
promotion
twice
of
they have taken
cross-border terrorism
responsibility, and
for
thereafter,
several decades now.
possibly at the behest of their handlers.
Now,
they
as per
rolled it
CCS
back.
decision that I
But
referred to
TRF is one organization which
23rd
is
April,
front of the Lashkar-e-Taiba,
India will keep
and
the
you
treaty
would
in abeyance
understand and,
until Pakistan
perhaps
credibly
be
and
knowledge of
irrevocably
it that we have
abjures
been
its
pursuing,
support for
listing
cross-border
of
terrorism.
TRF
Please
in,
note,
the United
please also
Nations,
note
by the United Nations
that
Security
climate
Council,
change,
by the Sanctions Committee,
demographic shifts,
UNSC,
and
1267
technological
Sanctions
changes
Committee.
have created
I'm
new
not
realities on ground
privy
as well.
to what was shared 2 hours back, but for
Kandan,
sure
we had
we'll
a question
update you
regarding,
on as to how the
trade
investigation
matters.
progresses in this matter.
Mega on UNSC 1267 Sanctions Committee. Yes, over the last 2 years or so, 23, 24, we have been sharing information
From the time
with the United
of
Nations
Operation
Security
Sindoor,
Council, the monitoring team of the Sanctions Committee, as to why the terrorist TRF, which is the front for Lashkar-e-Taiba, should be listed as a terrorist entity. We will be also, in few days' time, we will be sharing more details. Commenced on 7th May.
Security Council.
Till the understanding on
1267
cessation of
monitoring
firing
team
and
will
military
take
action on 10th
strong
May.
note of what we present, what we
There
file,
were conversations
and take due action
between
against
Indian and
That is
US
required.
leaders. Rishabh, on your question regarding the interview that the Pak foreign minister gave. In the last week, as a result of Operation Sindoor, Pakistan has seen its terror centers in Bahawalpur, Murudke, Muzaffarabad, and other places destroyed. You have been informed of it in several of the briefings that we've had. Thereafter, its military capabilities were significantly degraded by us, and key air bases effectively put out of action. If the Pakistani FM wishes to project these as achievement, obviously he is welcome to do so. Where India is concerned, our stand was very clear and consistent from the start. We would target terrorist infrastructure operating out of Pakistan. If the Pakistani military stayed out, there would be no problem. If they fired on us, we would respond suitably. Till the night of 9th May, Pakistan was threatening India with a massive assault. Once their attempt failed on 10th May morning, and they received a devastating Indian counter response, their tune changed. And their DGMO eventually reached out to us. I just referred to the timings, etc., as to when they reached out. In essence, India's position remained the same. Pakistan's position changed on 10th May morning after its air bases were
On the
effectively
evolving
pulled
military
out,
situation.
put out of action. The issue of trade,
All
did
you have
not
to
come
do
up
is to
in any of these
look at
discussions.
who called
who to negotiate the terms of the cessation of firing. Siddhant, you had
By the
a
way,
question
you know,
on
we are living in
a
a
day
latest
and age
statement
issued by you have the
Pakistan Foreign Office.
satellite pictures
We
available.
have seen the
commercially.
statement made by the Pakistani side.
I urge you to look at that a nation which has
satellite
nurtured
pictures of the
terrorism on an
sites which
industrial
Pakistan
scale
says
should think
or
that it
claims
can
to have
escape
attacked
the
in India.
consequences. Contrast it with the
is
sites
fooling itself.
and places which the terrorist infrastructure
We
sites that
successfully
India
targeted
destroyed
and destroyed.
were responsible. That will give you a clear answer. Claiming victory is an old habit. 1975 की बात यही थी, 71 की बात यही रही, 1999 करगिल वॉर में भी यही राग आलापा। तो पाकिस्तान का तो पुराना ये उनका ढोल बजाने का है, जो रवैया है, आलापने का रवैया है, ढोल बहुत पुराना है। परस्त हो जाओ लेकिन ढोल बजाओ। Rishabh, you also had a question regarding on that. I think not only for the deaths of Indians, there is some, but there's some of many other innocents. There are two, three things there. There's talk of there is now a new normal social media post about the sooner Pakistan gets American aircraft, etc. But those questions are for them to answer, not for us. But on the nuclear, we in the defense briefing, if you remember, our side made things very clear as to what was the target, etc. As far as your particular question, I think the Pak foreign minister also has made some comments on that. The better it is. Manas, shall we take more questions? About the nuclear issue that you pointed out. See, the military action from our side was entirely in the conventional domain. This was also made very clear in the defense briefing yesterday. There were some questions also which were asked. There were some reports, however,
कोई बदलाव नहीं हुआ है। जैसा कि आप जानते हैं, लंबित मामला केवल
denied by them.
पाकिस्तान द्वारा अवैध रूप से कब्जा किए गए भारतीय क्षेत्र को खाली करने
on record. So, Rishabh, that also answers your question.
As you know, India has a firm stance
regarding
that ceasefire and what sort of
give
role
in to
other
nuclear
countries
blackmail,
play, etc.
or allow
the
cross-border
specific
terrorism
date,
to be conducted invoking it.
time and wording of the
In
understanding
conversations
was
with
worked
various
out
countries, we've also cautioned
between the DGMOs of the two
subscribing
countries
to such
at their
scenarios
phone call
could hurt them
on
in their
10th
own
May
region.
2025, commencing at 15:35
Good
hours.
evening, sir. Megha from News.
The Foreign Secretary had
Question is,
made a
India,
statement in this regard,
it's being
as you would
reported,
be
is
aware.
going to be sending
The
a
request
team
for this call
to the
was received by MEA
1267
from the Pakistani High Commission at
Sanctions
37
Committee. The meeting is
hours.
going to be held later in the week.
The Pakistani
And,
side
the purpose
had
for it is
initial
to declare
difficulties
the PRF as
connecting
a
the hotline
globally designated
due to
terrorist organization. If you could shed more light into this.
connecting to the Indian side due to technical difficulties. Rishabh, the timing was then decided based on the availability of the Indian DGMO at 15:35 hours. You will of course appreciate that early on 10th morning, we had mounted an extremely effective attack on key Pakistani Air Force bases. That was the reason they were now willing to stop firing and military action. Let me be clear, it was the force of Indian arms that compelled Pakistan to stop
Smita Sharma
its
here.
firing.
I mean, the US
As
State
regards
Department actually in the
conversations
press
with
statement
other
of 10th
nations,
May, it was
the
in
message
bold
from
and headlines
India
mentioned
was clear and
US brokered
consistent.
ceasefire between India and Pakistan.
And exactly the
I'm just
same
trying to
message that we
understand
were
if New
conveying
Delhi actually rejected it
from
outright,
public
raised
platforms
it with Washington DC then, that this
was the one
framing was
conveyed in these
incorrect.
private conversations.
Or is it only now
It was that India
is
was
making it
responding
clear
to the
that there was no
22nd
US
April
role in it?
terrorist attack
Just a quick question on whether
by
there's any
targeting the
update on
terrorist
PK Sabu, the
infrastructure.
BSF constable,
by
who has been in
reaching out to
Pakistan
both
However,
captive
if the
for more than 20
Pakistani
years.
armed
said that
forces
he
Or he's been
pressured
arrested
fire,
by the country.
Indian
to
armed
just
forces
come
was fired
forward for
back.
the cessation of hostilities.
If Pakistan stops,
saying that if you
India
don't
will
do
also
that,
stop.
I will
From the
stop
Hindu,
trade with
in
both
This
the
was also the
countries.
message that was conveyed to the Pakistani side at the time of the commencement of Operation
clearly
Sindoor,
what you are calling
which was
false
not
statements
needed
made by US President
resolution
Donald
by the
Trump.
Pakistani
that
side.
India did not broker, the US did not broker a ceasefire,
side,
trade was not
for
discussed. These are
making
all
these
things that have been
claims,
said
which
now
It is
on
natural
the
that
record,
many foreign leaders who
in
heard
camera.
this
So have you raised
us
this at any
would have
level?
shared it
with Pakistan, your
And
question.
similarly,
You know, we have
yesterday
had
at the
several
MOD
rounds of
briefing,
briefings.
Jessica, you had a
we heard them
question on
speak
we had
about
to share with you
the Chinese
kind of
where
the other day you
support
saw that
to
the
Pakistan.
perpetrators of the attack
I wanted to ask if this
in
is
particular
something that is going to
has
be
raised
taken
his
up with
hands.
China in terms of
I would also
India
like
and
to
China's
take this
own
back a little
bilateral
bit.
relationship.
IWT, the
So
Indus
both
Water
of them, are
Treaty
these
was
two things
concluded
going to
in the
have any
spirit
impact
of
on India's
goodwill,
relations with either the
and
US
friendship.
or China?
Investigation is
specified
going on
in
in
the
this
preamble of the
particular
treaty.
matter. You would have
However,
सर नीरज हूँ न्यूज 18 सर नीरज हूँ न्यूज 18 इंडिया से। आपने कहा कि कई अमेरिकी नेताओं के बाद मिलिट्री जो कार्रवाई चल रही थी भारत की उस दौरान बातचीत हुई। प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी से किस अमेरिकी नेता की बातचीत हुई? क्योंकि मीडिया रिपोर्ट में आया है कि अमेरिकी उपराष्ट्रपति जेडी वांस से बातचीत भी की।
cross-border terrorism. Please note, please also note
by the United Nations
that climate change, demographic shifts, and technological changes have created
चल रहा था
I'm not
पाकिस्तान के
realities on
खिलाफ,
ground.
आतंकवाद के खिलाफ, माफ
What
कीजिएगा,
was
तो
shared
बांग्लादेश में अवामी लीग पर बैन
And then
किया
we had a
गया।
question regarding
भारत
as
इसको
to how
कैसे
trade
investigation
matters
progresses in this matter.
Okay, Megha, on
Here,
UNSC, first
12,
regarding your
67
question about
Sanctions Committee.
Secretary Rubio's
Yes,
comments.
over the
On
last
that, I've
2
already
years
spoken. I've
or
told
so,
you
23,
how
24,
we
the
have been understanding between India and Pakistan was bilaterally reached, and what was the on that I've already spoken. I've told you
23,
how
24,
on trade matters. I do understand that there is a proposal which has been made in Geneva. And what was the on that I've already spoken. I've told you how on trade matters. I do understand that there is a proposal which has been made in Geneva. And what was the on that I've already spoken. I've told you how on trade matters. I do understand that
I've
there is
already
a proposal
answered
which
those
has been made in
questions
Geneva.
because when I talked about the question of ceasefire as to who decided what were the terms when it happened, etc. So I would urge you to look at those comments of mine. I've told you that we have conveyed our position. I conveyed our position here on record, so I will request you to look at that. On the matter of PK Sahu, I don't have an update, so possibly we'll get you an update, but these are matters which pertain to the Ministry of Defense and they are looking into it. On again, Suhasini, on ceasefire, I've made India's position very clear, where we stand. So I would urge you to look at my comments. On the other question that you had, and possibly it had come up in the conversation or the press conference yesterday, there we have, I would say that we have obviously taken note of this. I direct your attention to the comments in the defense briefing about the extent of their effectiveness or otherwise. नीरज, आपके 2 सवाल। प्रधानमंत्री की बात अमेरिका के उपराष्ट्रपति जेडी वांस से हुई थी और उस दरमियान जो बातचीत हुई थी दोनों नेताओं के बीच में, उससे आपको अवगत भी कराया गया है। जहाँ तक अवामी लीग की बात है, the ban on the Awami League without due process is a concerning development. As a democracy, India is naturally concerned at curtailment of democratic freedoms and shrinking political space. We strongly support the early holding of free, fair and inclusive elections in Bangladesh. जो अवामी लीग पे बैन लगा है वो एक चिंता का विषय है। एक जो लोकतांत्रिक प्रणाली में एक तरीका होता है सब काम करने का, वो ड्यू प्रोसेस को दरकिनार करके किया गया है। एक लोकतंत्र के रूप में भारत जो वहाँ पर लोकतांत्रिक आज़ादी को रोका जा रहा है और जो वहाँ पर राजनीतिक गतिविधियों के लिए जो दायरा है वो कम हो रहा है, इसको लेके हम लोग चिंतित हैं। और साथ में ये हमारा ये मानना है, हमारा ये आह्वान है कि बांग्लादेश में जल्द से जल्द एक निष्पक्ष और समावेशी चुनाव कराया जाए। And we then go
मनीष।
सर मैं मनीष झा हूँ, TV9 भारतवर्ष से। पिछले दिनों हमने एक और कैरेक्टर देखा, वो था तुर्की का रोल। जिस तरीके से टर्की के ड्रोन पाकिस्तान ने इस्तेमाल किए, इसके अलावा टर्की ने लगातार इस मामले में पाकिस्तान का सपोर्ट किया। जब हम आतंकवाद के खिलाफ लड़ाई लड़ रहे हैं और टर्की उस समय पाकिस्तान के साथ है, जबकि आपको याद होगा 9/11 के टाइम में अमेरिका का डायलॉग था कि अगर आप हमारे साथ नहीं हैं तो आप आतंकियों के साथ हैं। तो टर्की के मामले में भारत की अब नीति क्या रहने वाली है?
देखिए, जो सवाल का जवाब दे दिया गया उसको ना पूछे, कोई नया सवाल हो तो बताएं। यशी।
This is Yeshi Seli from Business India. Are there any leads of the terrorists who attacked on the 22nd of April? And 3 terrorists were neutralized in Shopian today. Do they have any links with the terror attack of the 22nd? And in addition, when are the next DGMO talks likely to be?
एक मिनट। बताइए
सर। ब्रह्म प्रकाश हूँ न्यूज़ इंडिया से। मेरा सवाल है कि जिस तरह से ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के दौरान जो हमारे मित्र देशों की भूमिका रही, उसको लेकर खासतौर से अमेरिका की भूमिका, ये देखा गया है कि भारत और पाकिस्तान को एक ही तराजू में बराबर तौला गया है, ये माना जा रहा है। क्या जिस तरह से भारत कहता रहा है, अमेरिका कहता रहा है कि दोनों क्लोज पार्टनर है, क्या भारत की डिप्लोमेसी को एक तरह से अमेरिका की तरफ से झटका लगा है? भारत इस पर दोबारा विचार करेगा? क्योंकि जिस तरह से रुख रहा है अमेरिका का, ये माना जा रहा है, सीधे शब्दों में कहें कि अमेरिका ने धोखा दिया इस पूरे मामले में, क्या कहना है?
मधुरेंद्र।
सर मधुरेंद्र, मैं न्यूज़ नेशन से। यह स्पष्ट है कि चीन और तुर्की के हथियार भारत के खिलाफ इस्तेमाल किए गए, और इसी संदर्भ में मैं जानना चाहता हूं कि डिफेंस इंटेलिजेंस एजेंसी की जो आज ब्रीफिंग हुई है, क्या उसमें डिफेंस अटैचे चीन के और तुर्की के बुलाए गए थे? क्या बुलाए जाने पर उन्होंने अटेंड किया? दूसरा सवाल मेरा यह है कि हमने एक ट्रेंड क्रिएट किया है कि एनी एक्ट ऑफ टेरर विल बी एक्ट ऑफ वॉर, तो क्या उसको डिफाइन कर सकते हैं कि क्या आगे होने वाला कोई भी भारत पर पाकिस्तान की तरफ से या पाकिस्तान प्रायोजित आतंक की तरफ से हमला सीधे तौर पर कार्रवाई के तौर पे पाकिस्तान पर वॉर के तौर पे देखा जाएगा? हम सीधे युद्ध थोपेंगे या युद्ध करेंगे पाकिस्तान से?
मनीष जी, पहले तुर्की को लेके काफ़ी सारे सवाल थे। देखिए, सुहासिनी के सवाल के जवाब में मैंने बताया था कि हमारा क्या नज़रिया है, और तुर्की को लेके और चीन के लेके उनके जो वेपन्स वगैरह को लेके जो डिफेंस की ब्रीफिंग में भी खुलासा किया गया। तो मैं कहूँगा कि आप जो वहाँ पर बताया गया बात, उस पर ध्यान केंद्रित करें। जहाँ तक हम लोग का सवाल है, हम लोग ने बताया कि हम लोगों ने इन गतिविधियों को नोट किया है, और साथ ही में जो कमेंट्स डिफेंस ब्रीफिंग में दिया गया था इन चीज़ों के बारे में, उस पर मैं आपका ध्यान आकर्षित कराना चाहता हूं। और साथ ही साथ उन्होंने इसकी इफ़ेक्टिवनेस जो कितना पुरजोर रहा उसके बारे में या नहीं रहा उसके बारे में उन्होंने बात किया था। Yeshi, the investigations are on, so we'll have to wait for the progress. Obviously, when we make progress, we'll keep you updated. DGMO talks, I understand, had happened yesterday, and many of you were informed of the developments and the discussion that had happened. The rest, as and when the next DGMO level talks happen, you will be kept informed of it. ब्रह्म प्रकाश जी, आपने जो बात की हाइफिनेशन की बात की कि एक तरीके से भारत पाकिस्तान दोनों साथ में बंध गए, एक हाइफिनेशन हो गया, तो उस पर हम लोग का यह मानना है कि इट इज़ क्वाइट द रिवर्स. देयर इज़ widespread understanding in the world that Indian tourists were the victims of terror at Pahalgam, and that the epicenter of terrorism is across the border in Pakistan. A number of foreign leaders, बहुत सारे विदेशी जो नेतागण हैं, उनसे जो हमारी बातचीत हुई उसमें उन्होंने माना कि भारत को अपने को डिफेंड करने का उसका हक है और अपने लोगों को बचाने का, उसकी सुरक्षा का प्रदान करने का उनको हक है. मैं आपका ध्यान यूएन सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल का जो रेजोल्यूशन है, प्रेस स्टेटमेंट यूएन सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल ने 25 अप्रैल को जो अपनाया था, उस पर मैं ध्यान दिलाना चाहूँगा। वो प्रेस स्टेटमेंट बड़ा क्लियरली ये बताता है, मैं कोट कर रहा हूँ, there is need to uphold perpetrators, organizers, financiers and sponsors of this reprehensible act of terrorism accountable and bring them to justice. It stressed that those responsible for this killing should be held accountable. तो इससे आप जो हाइफिनेशन की बात कर रहे हैं ना, उसके पूरे ही विपरीत लोगों ने माना है कि एक देश है जो आतंकवाद को बढ़ावा देता है, इंडस्ट्रियल स्केल पर आतंकवाद पैदा करता है और उनके खिलाफ सख्त से सख्त कार्रवाई होनी चाहिए।
अमेरिका ने भारत को धोखा दिया इस पूरे मामले में।
अमेरिका, जहाँ तक अमेरिका और अन्य देशों के बारे में हम लोगों ने अपना पक्ष आपके सामने रखा है। वी हैव श्रीधर, सॉरी, एक मिनट, ये इनका मधुरेंद्र का सवाल रह गया था। मधुरेंद्र, देखिए, तुर्की और चीन के अस्त्र के बारे में हमने अभी जवाब दे दिया है आपको, और जहाँ तक एक्ट ऑफ टेरर की बात है, हमारे तरफ से हमारे लीडरशिप के लेवल पे कहा जा रहा है कि क्रॉस बॉर्डर टेररिज्म का जहाँ सवाल है, हमारा ज़ीरो टॉलरेंस रहेगा। जब भी कोई इस प्रकार का घटना होता है तो हम उसका पुरजोर जवाब देंगे। उस डिफेंस अटैचे को बुलाया गया, उसकी मीटिंग हुई थी, उन्हें बुलाया गया था। कौन कौन वहाँ आए थे इसके बारे में मेरी संज्ञान नहीं है, मैं आपको इसके बारे में अवगत कराऊंगा। क्या मैंने कहा ना कि हमारे जो अभी प्रधानमंत्री के भाषण में आपने देखा होगा किस प्रकार का बयान था क्रॉस बॉर्डर टेररिज्म को लेके, और आतंकवाद से लड़ने के लिए जो हमारा प्रण है, जो हमारा नीति है, उसके बारे में खुलासा किया गया था, वो नीति रहेगा।
So Sridhar from the Asian Age and Deccan Chronicle. 3 months back, when PM Modi visited the US, there was a joint statement in which the US specifically called out these Pakistan-based terror organizations, and there was widespread satisfaction in India at that point of time. But strangely, there was absolutely no reference to terror or Pakistan, that Pakistan needs to dismantle this terrorist infrastructure in the statements of President Trump. I mean, it was as if, two siblings are fighting, and the US has stepped in to end it. There was absolutely no reference to Pakistan sponsoring terrorism. Are you a bit shocked at that why there has been such a dramatic change in the past 3 months? And a small question, could we have a list of the civilian casualties in Operation Sindoor? We have got some figures from the military side on the military casualties. What about the civilian casualties? Are you going to reveal that? Thank you, sir.
Rita?
Vinita from the Asian Age Deccan Chronicle. Randirji, we have reached a ceasefire situation, but why are we seeing firing at the border and drone activities? Airlines had to start their function, but again shut down at 5 airports yesterday night. Just an idea that is everything okay at the borders, or are we still fighting a battle there?
Geeta?
Geeta Mohan from India Today. Just wanted to know again about the dehyphenation and hyphenation question. India invested diplomatically for years in the dehyphenation of India-Pakistan, not just with the world, but particularly with the United States of America, and we've seen them dehyphenate. And now we're seeing President Trump hyphenate India-Pakistan, speak of them in the same breath, talk about them being great countries that US wants to do trade with. Is India raising this matter with the United States of America, reminding them of 9/11 and Osama bin Laden?
Okay, Reza.
Reza from Hindustan Times. Just a quick question on President Putin's offer for direct talks with Ukraine. Do we have a position on that?
Okay. So you talked about a fight against terrorism. You saw what the UN Security Council came up with a statement. The UN Security Council consists of 5 permanent members and 10 non-permanent members. It came out with a very strong condemnation. The United States is part of that. Our partnership with the United States as far as security, defense continues. It will continue to be continue to grow and continue to deepen. Vinita, you had a question about drones, etc. These are questions that you will have to, when the MOD briefing happens, possibly they will give you. These are questions to be answered by people who deal with it. I don't have any particular update on it. Geeta, on the hyphenation part, see, I've already made it clear. Our understanding is that instead of being hyphenated, quite the reverse is happening, because people are realizing that here is a country which is running a factory of terrorism, and they need to be suitably taken to task. The conversation that we have had with leaders across the world, with countries, they have all stood with India. There was very strong condemnation from leaders across the world, countries across the world, and they also realize that India has the right to respond, to take action for protecting its people. Sorry, I have already answered your question. On Reza, on your question regarding the direct talks, we welcome the direct talks that have been announced between Russia and Ukraine. Talks present an opportunity for both parties to address their concerns through dialogue and diplomacy. India has consistently advocated the need for sincere and practical engagement between Russia and Ukraine to ensure early and abiding peace. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the close of this press briefing. Thank you very much.